Hey there, thanks again for tuning in here. Today I'm going to be talking about how I work with audio stems. And I think audio stems are more and more kind of just part of the composer's workflow. And the way that I have it set up is just built into my template. I'm using Cubase, as I say in all my lessons. I'm sure you can do this very easily in Logic or Ableton or Pro Tools or whatever you're working in, Reaper, whatever you're working in. These principles are true in any respectable DAW for sure, and there's a lot of them out there, okay? So let's cut to my desktop here. Now I've got this little project. It's kind of just a landscape or a sort of soundscape type cue. And let's talk about why you want stems, okay? So you'll see here, sorry, all the purple tracks, those are all my stems. And why do you want stems? Well, when you're delivering music to an editor or a director or really anybody, whether they're using it in just an audio environment, like they're mixing a band's record, or if they're using it in film and TV, you want to give those editors some technical facility with rebalancing or maybe even remixing your audio. Let's say that you've got, as I do in this track, some rather high, sort of high sibilant percussion, right? Let's just listen to that example here. I'm gonna come over here. So there's this kind of like tick, 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 tick sound up there, and that might really conflict with dialogue in a film. They might love the music in every other way, and I want my music to be used. So I can't predict exactly how it's going to be used certainly in the production music world, right? So I need to give the editor the ability to figure out what they want to do with the music in real time. That's why you do stems. So how do you do stems? The way that I do stems, and I think the way a lot of people do, is it's built into your template like I do have these purple tracks over here, and I'll explain kind of what they are. But basically, they're just buses, right? So once again, you can do this in Logic or Pro Tools or whatever you're using because they all support buses. And you just send all your instruments there. So when you're building your template and, you are, you add a violin. Well, then you add it to your strings bus. You just send the output to strings bus. You add a new percussion element. You send it to your percussion bus. And then when I'm done with the project and I've got all these tracks, right, I don't output all the individual tracks because that is not what an editor wants. They don't want to get like 100 tracks from you. That's a disaster. But if you put all your percussion together, you put all of your string instruments together, you put all your brass together, you put all your synthesizers together. You're looking to give them somewhere between, maybe a minimum of 4 or 5 and a maximum of like a dozen, maybe 15 on the outside for something really, really complicated. So the idea here is you're trying to give people on the editing side some flexibility with how they use your music, okay? So let's talk about what good stems should accomplish, because this is really important. Like I said, an editor may want to work around dialogue. They need to be able to rebalance your music, or maybe even if they don't take out let's say there's a hi-hat, which is a very sibilant sounding instrument, or a shaker or something. Maybe they don't want to take that out altogether because it does add pace, but if they could go in and they could add a cut, some kind of bell cut or a filter to take out the region of that around that particular speaker's voice, right? But they don't want to take that out of all the instrumentation. In other words, if you had just given them a stereo mix, they'd have to like do a cut on the whole stereo mix, and that might really dramatically change what the editor is trying to get out of your music. Whereas if they can just do a cut on the hi-hat, and then they can leave the synths alone, leave the drums alone, leave the piano alone, that's better. It means your music gets served up much closer to your original intention, and it means they can get their work done quickly, okay? Things stems should never do never be out of sync. Okay, so this is another nice thing about having it built into your template where you are just outputting these groups or buses that I have over here. Because when you give them the audio files, you pretty much want them to be able to drag your 5 to a dozen audio tracks into their mixing session, and everything lines up on the same start, right? So you don't want stems that are different lengths and they have to like drag them around to figure out where they're in sync. No, that's not useful to them. The whole idea here is to save workflow, to reduce the amount of time it takes for them to get their work done and be using my music. So that's an advantage of this model I'm about to show you. And also merge related instruments is important. You should never merge unrelated instruments, right? Because they're going to want to just tackle those sibilant instruments, the drum kit. They're going to, if you have the piano and the hi-hat mixed into the same stem, they're going to be like, now I have to perform that filter cut on the piano too, and I don't want to do that, right? So by all means, put the hi-hat with the shaker, with the tambourine, that sort of thing. Put the clarinets with the oboes, put the violins with the violas, right? But don't put the bass synth with the violin. Don't do that. So these are some of the things to consider. So let's take a look at how I have my setup, and I'm just going to spend a few minutes on this. I'm trying to tighten up my my general time frame here. So now what I've got down here in the lower left of my window, you'll see I've got a whole list of stems. I've labeled them stems for reasons that I won't go into, but basically has to do with using macros and stuff to facilitate my workflow. So I've got strings, wind instruments, percussion, brass. You can see all these. And whenever I add a track, like, you know, I've got this, I'm using this track right here, which is Groove Agent 5, which is just a drum module, and Groove Agent 5 is percussion, so I have that going out to my percussion bus. And we can see that if I solo that and I'm going to play it back, you'll see that the audio comes out here on my percussion bus. You can see the little audio level right there. Okay? So as I play the whole track, you'll see that different ones of these start lighting up. Let's see. Right? So I've got some bass in there. I have got stuff coming out to the master. That's probably a mix of the stems, right? So all my instruments come into stems, they come out of stems into the master. So I do still get a master mix. I've got some percussion, I've got some bass, and I've got some drones happening down here. Okay. So the idea here is that I am grouping things together which have a timbral or sonic commonality. Like I said, violins with violas, you know, that sort of thing. Now, when I do an export from here, again, this is Cubase, but you can totally do this in other DAWs. If I do an export in Cubase Pro, it's particularly elegant. You know, I love the way that it's done now in Cubase 12. I can just go here and I can choose to export all of these. And since I know that this is kind of a hybrid synth-based cue, I don't have you know, brass, I don't have any vocals, so I can actually kind of optimize which ones of the stems I'm going to export. And what it's going to do is it's going to export these stems based on whatever my region up here is, this like gray region bar, right? So I usually just select everything and then I can lock that on, and I'm going to wind up with cues that, you know, go from start point 0 to whatever the end of that range is. So I'm going to wind up with any one of the stems I checked off in that export list. I wind up with an audio file that just contains what was sent to that bus, and it's all the same length. So I may have, in this case, 4 or 5 different files, audio files that are all exactly the same length. Whether there's music in there or not, the editor doesn't care. What they want is just to quickly sync it up and know that they can make cuts and edits and everything is going to stay in its right place. So I don't actually wind up doing very much more to produce stems, and that's why it's important to have it built into your template. If you have any questions about what I've demonstrated here, how to do it, or some of the concerns and questions you might have, please post in the comments. I'm always checking it out, and I'm really engaged with trying to build a community around these questions. If you have suggestions for how to improve it, please let me know. But thanks so much. Please like and subscribe. I really appreciate the support for the videos and for my channel, and I will see you again in a couple of days. Till then, bye.